Hello, my name is Mark van Oppen, and I'm a member of the Bluemix Private Cloud team. We're headquartered in Seattle, but we provide private cloud services all over the world for IBM. Bluemix Private Cloud is private cloud as a service. We deliver private cloud infrastructure with the support of a global enterprise team through IBM. Bluemix Private Cloud is the infrastructure in both dedicated and local consumption models. We do this at scale every day, so you don't have to. The breakthrough of Bluemix Private Cloud is empowering our customers to use open standards without having to bring that expertise in-house. IBM Bluemix Private Cloud is built on KVM and OpenStack. As a customer of Bluemix Private Cloud, you get to build your business on open standards, leveraging the power and scale of IBM. The most common frustration with open source technologies is that they're notoriously difficult to run. We commit all of our time and energy into OpenStack back into the community because we fundamentally believe that it's important to keep customers vendor agnostic when consuming open standards. Part of the power of open standards is that no one entity controls that code base. An important element of the Bluemix Private Cloud product is that we do not use a proprietary OpenStack distribution. One of the key values that we see in the marketplace and why we decided to approach it in this manner is we want to preserve vendor-agnostic flexibility for our customers. For the purpose of this presentation, let's define private cloud as single-tenant infrastructure available to one customer at a time. Also, let's define public cloud as shared infrastructure used by many customers and benefiting from that shared cooperation by having low barrier to entry. IBM's cloud industry perspective is really centered around these three vertical columns that include public cloud, dedicated, and local cloud. Dedicated and local are both considered private cloud, but one is in our facility, the other is in yours. Private cloud is often synonymous with data isolation, high security, a large capital expense, and ongoing professional services to keep it up to date. Bluemix Private Cloud is private cloud as a service, available in two consumption models, dedicated and local. It's important to define it as private cloud as a service because it no longer is specific enough to say private cloud. Going back to the multiple consumption models, Bluemix Private Cloud can be dedicated. And I say dedicated because this means it is a private cloud hosted in our data centers, located all over the world. And you can take advantage of the backbone that connects all these facilities. In Bluemix Private Cloud, we have the power to deliver the entirety of a private cloud infrastructure through an operational expense model. The monthly fee encompasses the cost of the service level agreement, the software, and the hardware. At its very basic, Bluemix Private Cloud is 3 physical compute nodes and a pair of firewalls in front. In the background of the first 2 compute nodes is the administrative functions and the overhead that powers your private cloud. The balance of resources on the 3 compute nodes as a whole make up the pool of resources that you can deploy as virtual machines in your private cloud. Growing from this base reference architecture, you can actually break out the administrative functions of OpenStack that are hovering in the background of those first 2 compute nodes and deploy them as a dedicated controller pair, also running in a highly available configuration. From that starting point, you can have the option of adding additional compute nodes, a block storage solution, or an object storage solution. This is entirely private infrastructure, meaning that down to the hardware level, the individual servers are racked and configured just for you, and they are under management and addressable all within the OpenStack UI. In the dedicated model of Bluemix Private Cloud, the monthly fee includes the hardware and doesn't require a long-term contract commit. It is an all-encompassing fee that covers and delivers a private cloud as a service, all powered by open standards. Alternately, users of Bluemix Private Cloud can elect to deploy a local footprint. This means we would work together to define a bill of materials and send you with this shopping list to go buy the hardware. Whether it's from us or another provider, it would be deployed in your facility and we would remotely access and manage it, delivering the same industry-leading SLA and letting you consume private cloud as a service from within your own facility. This model also empowers customers to utilize a mix of capital expense and operational expense. The monthly fee for the local environment is broken down into 2 parts. There's one set rate for a private cloud site controller in your facility, and then there's an incremental cost for every asset under management. Another key differentiator for new customers using Bluemix Private Cloud is our customer success team and the onboarding experience that they get when using open standards for the first time. The Bluemix Private Cloud team has a dedicated group of customer success managers that walks our new users and our new customers through industry best practices and OpenStack tips and tricks to make sure that this is a usable private cloud model for your team. You don't need to bring the expertise of running and using OpenStack in-house. You can leverage the IBM team to make that happen. And now let's launch into a demonstration of the Horizon user interface. Keep in mind that this is a vanilla Horizon user interface because it is completely unedited. We just curate and manage a consumable implementation of OpenStack for your private cloud. First, we will log in, then we will create a project and set quotas. Then we will create a user, create a custom flavor, log in as the newly created user, launch a virtual machine with the new custom flavor we just created, then we will create and assign a security group, assign a floating IP address, and attach a storage volume. Now we are logging in to Bluemix Private Cloud as a user with administrative credentials. Administrators are able to create projects, create users, assign quotas, and create base images for users to deploy as virtual machines. A project is a group of resources that can be assigned to a user or group of users. Projects are assigned quotas, which limit consumption of the physical resources provided to the cloud. The quotas are limits to resource consumption. They are not an allocation of available resources. Here we are going to create a new project called Project 1. We are going to customize the quota that we allocate to that project. In this example, the project is assigned a limit of 48 virtual CPUs. We can also set limits on the number of block storage volumes or snapshots that this project can use. We are going to keep the default values for the remaining options except for the total size of volumes and snapshots. In this case, we are assigning a limit of 1.5 terabytes. We are also going to update the RAM quota for the project. In this case, we're going to assign this group a limit of 96 gigs of RAM. Now it's time to create a new user for our new project. We are going to name the new user User1. Let's set the password and assign the new user to our new project. We are going to assign the role of member to this user because we do not want to give the user administrative control over our entire cluster. In OpenStack, a flavor is a template for describing the resource configuration of a virtual machine. An administrator can create custom flavors to precisely size the CPU, memory, and disk consumption of a virtual machine. In this case, we will create a custom flavor called B1 Medium and assign 2 virtual CPU cores along with 2 gigs of RAM and 20 gigs of ephemeral disk. We can also limit flavors to a specific project if we want to do so. For this flavor, we will restrict access to the Project 1 project only. No other projects in this cloud will be able to use this custom flavor. Now that the project and user are created, we will log out as the administrative user and log in under the new username we just created. This user has control over the assigned projects, but they do not see the administrative controls for the cluster. This user has the ability to see all of the images that were published by the administrative users. These images are curated by the administrative users of the cluster. Administrators can preload the images with corporate antivirus packages, monitoring software, or operating system patches as required. We are now going to launch a new virtual machine using an Ubuntu 14.04 image. This image was preloaded and pre-configured by the administrators of the cluster. The name of this new instance will be vm.app01. The size of the instance is based on the hardware template or flavor that we created earlier for this project. When you select a flavor, the user receives immediate feedback on whether there is enough quota remaining to allow this machine to be built. If the user attempts to exceed the quota, they will see this overconsumption visually in the bottom right-hand corner before attempting to spawn the instance. Here we are selecting the flavor we previously created. As this is a new cluster, there are no SSH key pairs added. We'll be using a password authentication process to access the new machine, but users are able to use their own SSH key pairs for passwordless access as needed. Also, there is only a single network to choose from because we haven't yet built any VLANs. We will select the internal network, and now we can launch the new instance. The launch times of the instances are highly dependent on the size of the base operating system or base image. Since we chose an Ubuntu 14.04 image, The spawning and boot time of this instance should be fairly quick. Larger operating systems can take a minute or two to spawn. There is also a software-based firewall which must be opened for the instance to receive external traffic. We are going to add a new security group that allows for port 22 traffic to reach the virtual machines that are members of that security group. We will now edit our newly created virtual machine to add it to the newly created security group. Just because an instance has a security group that allows access to a particular port, that does not mean it can receive internet traffic. The virtual machine will now need to be assigned a floating IP address. Floating IP addresses are used to assign a publicly routable internet address to a specific virtual machine. Because this is a new project, the project doesn't have any preloaded floating IPs. We'll grab an IP address from the pool and then allocate that IP address to the virtual machine. Let's say that our new virtual machine requires a block storage volume to be assigned. We are going to create a new block storage volume. Let's assign the volume size of 5 gigs. Next, we will assign the new volume that we just built. This volume can now be formatted and mounted inside the instance. Now you can see a confirmed mount of the block storage volume. This concludes the demonstration of the Horizon interface in Bluemix Private Cloud. Customers choose Bluemix Private Cloud because we can deliver security, compliance, control, and performance, all with a choice of delivery models. So how do you get started with Bluemix Private Cloud? The fastest path to getting your private cloud deployed today is to use the dedicated model. This means that in less than a few days, we can deliver a fully featured private cloud all powered by open standards.